Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Just a couple of housekeeping items. I know we're going to put these also in the chat, but there is closed captioning enabled, and you can click on the closed caption option at the bottom of your screen if you're on Zoom. If you're joining us live on YouTube, the closed caption should be showing. Also, if you want to ask a question, you can either do so in the chat, or again, if you're joining us over Zoom, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom in order to ask us a question as we're going through this today. So welcome everyone to Every Action's new live stream series, Leading with Every Action. We are interviewing industry experts to discuss important topics facing nonprofit leaders today. Our first series has been a three-part series focused on equitable and inclusive leadership. And if you missed part 1 and 2, you can check them out on our YouTube channel. I am Jamie Muller. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Senior Director of Partnerships here at Every Action, and I'm lucky enough to work with agencies and consultants and other technology providers in the space who support the nonprofit industry's needs. I'm also a former nonprofit leader myself. I'm actually a social worker and was in the nonprofit industry for about 15 years before coming over to the tech side. And so these topics are very near and dear to my heart, as well as our guests. So in order to discuss this really important and interesting topic and to further our conversation from the first two parts that we had earlier this month, I'd like to introduce Minal Bopaiah. Minal is the founder and principal consultant at Brevity and Wit. She is also the author, speaker, and strategic consultant, and she has more than 20 years of professional experience focused on human-centered design, behavior change science, and the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I can't wait to talk to you, Minal, about equitable leadership today. And like I said, audience, if you have any questions, now would be the time. And we are actually going to be giving away some of Minal's books at the end of our talk today. So I'm really excited to be able to raffle those off because it's an important and great read. And she brings so much wealth and just enthusiasm to this conversation. And so, Minal, to start us off, can you talk to us about what equitable leadership looks like when it's done well in a nonprofit organization?
Sure. Well, thank you first, Jamie, for having me. Thank you to Every Action for including me in this series. I'm really flattered to be here and happy to be here with your audience. So what does equitable leadership look like in an organization? So for leaders to be able to be equitable in their leadership style, they need to be able to have three things. One, they need to value difference. So we have been socialized in a lot of ways to fear difference. Not just intellectually, but actually pretty viscerally. So there's a lot of inner work that goes on for leaders to be able to get comfortable with difference and to not feel threatened by it. The second thing is that they need to be able to see systems, which means that they need to be able to see the system that they're in an organization, but also the system that surrounds us. And there's a number of stories in the book about where I talk about, being able to see how the system is shaped and designed for certain outcomes that benefit certain people over other people. When you're able to see the system, systems of oppression no longer become about interpersonal conflict, right? They become about how do we design this system so that everybody has a fair shot. And then finally, the third thing that they need is they need to be willing to use their power to create more opportunity for others. And that can be a change of mindset for some leaders, maybe not for others who are really servant leadership oriented. But you have to be willing to use your power in the organization to open the door for other people, to give other people more chance at opportunity, which includes more chance at income. You can't see salaries as a cost that you have to keep flat as possible, because that actually hinders opportunity. And so really, in order to have these three prerequisites and then take them into embedding equity in your organization, what leaders really need to have is moral courage. Like there is just a dearth of courage and moral imagination in our society right now. But that's really what people need in order to find an inspiring, inclusive, and equitable leader.
I love that. I love that idea of moral courage. That's such a great way of putting it, because I think it goes beyond the idea of being self-aware. You can be self-aware, but still not be very courageous with how you expose that or how you use that. Well, we have a question, and it is related to what you just said, Minal. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to bring it up right now. Thanks, Andrea. What did you mean by keeping salaries flat? What do you mean by that?
So our current economic system is, well, this is going to be a radical thing to say, but stick with me as I walk you through it. It is a legacy of slavery, in that most people think that management manuals came out of the industrial era. That's not true. They actually came out of slavery, and there were manuals about how to get the most productivity out of a human being at the lowest cost, right? That is the fundamental economic model of slavery. And we perpetuate that to this day when we have economic models that say that salaries are an expense that should be kept as low as possible, instead of an asset that indicates how much you're investing in your people, right? And if you really want to create opportunity for others, like equity fundamentally comes down to power, money, and time. And I could spend a lot of time talking about those three things, but money is the one that's like a little radioactive for leaders, because they're like, oh, I don't mind helping people feel more included, but we're not going to talk about salaries or money or how we even move money. But that's really what it's about, because money is the currency through which people can buy access to opportunity in this country, right? If they don't have money, they can't design a life that works for them. And the reason why money is the most powerful mechanism is because people are different and they need different things. And we're not going to be able, in my mind, to design a perfect utopia where everybody gets all the services that they want out of a company, whether it's childcare or caretaker relief or short-term disability or parental leave. But if we give people access to capital, then they have the ability to create those lives for themselves. So really, we need to start talking about using the money in our organizations, even if it's a nonprofit, to open up opportunity for people.
That's such a well-stated way of looking at it. And I'm just gonna, I know you can handle me asking you questions off the bat. We talked about this, but so you mentioned servant leadership, and I want to just go back to that for a second, because I know you're looking at it, maybe you're wanting to hold folks a little bit more accountable than I think that people think when they think servant leadership, because I would probably argue that many nonprofit leaders see themselves as servant leaders by nature of the role that they serve. My question to you is, do you still, even if somebody considers themselves a servant, as a servant leader, do you still find that there's inequitable practices in how they go about that? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like,
I mean, I'm struggling, like, I don't want to like bash anybody who identifies as a servant leader, but the current nonprofit model needs to be reimagined, right? Like we have to come to terms with the fact that philanthropy and most nonprofits were a legacy also of white supremacy, in that philanthropy really took off during like the robber baron era, where like the Rockefellers and the Fords wanted to like brandish their reputation, and because they had fundamentally made their money by exploiting marginalized folks, whether it was people of color or poor people or children or whatever it was, right? Or extracting resources from our environment, right? And so they created philanthropy to sort of say that they're giving back, and then many of them employed either their wives or their family members who didn't need a salary. And so that's the nonprofit space is full of white women, many of whom are married and therefore can afford to work for less than a market rate, right? And so when we're saying, why can't we recruit people of color or people of other identities, until we address salaries, like, and being able to really say that if you do good in this world, you should be compensated highly. We will not be able to engage in nonprofits that are truly equitable and inclusive and are truly justice oriented. Because really what this comes down to is we have to shift our relationship with money. Edgar Villanueva, he's written a book called Decolonizing Wealth that's really good. And the way I sort of paraphrase that book, if I had to in a sentence, is what he's really asking is, how do we use money as medicine instead of a weapon? Right? And so that, if you ask yourself that, you start to re-examine all of your practices. I was just talking with a fundraising team, and there's a tradition in fundraising that whoever's giving the money has all the power. And so there was like an elderly gentleman who would require that the fundraisers, like the women would have to go to his house and like in order to like get the money. And I was like, no, just because they have the money doesn't mean that they get to have all the power in this situation, right? That like, we need to rework how we see this. But nonprofits have absorbed a lot of for-profit or slaveocracy mentality of whoever has the money has all the power and they get to dictate the terms. And that is not fundamentally not a partnership model, right? That is using money to control people, which is a supremacist use of power. That is not a liberatory use of power. So while I think that they may be in service of the mission, to do DEI, you need to move from a supremacist use of power to a liberatory use of power.
Right. Well, you're also, you're bringing up such a good point, because if we continue to perpetuate a culture in the nonprofit industry of being servant leaders that don't need to make, an equitable salary and be seen as an asset, we're not creating a sustainable future for the nonprofit industry, nor are we living up to what we probably all see as a major part of our purpose in working in the nonprofit industry. And so it really comes down to leadership to take that first step, right?
Yeah, and I think everybody has to change. Like, I've also been working with other organizations where they were like, is it right to pay people to do good? And I was like, yes. People like that way you incentivize doing good, because if you don't pay people to do good, what you have done is you have incentivized doing things that are bad. And Rianne Eisler of the Center for Partnership Studies talks about this in her book, The Real Wealth of Nations. Right now, our GDP goes up when things that are bad for the humanity and bad for the environment happen. When there's an oil spill, the GDP goes up. When there's a pandemic, the GDP goes up, right? Like it flattens somewhere, but goes up in other places, right? We need to create an economic system where when things that are done that are good for humanity or good for the environment are reflected and financial growth increases, right? The way to do that is start to incentivize people who are doing things that are good for humanity or good for the environment. Right now, we pay a plumber more to fix our pipes than we pay a daycare worker to take care of our kids.
Yeah.
Right? So long as we have that fundamental philosophy in place, all of this is just window dressing. Like, those are the ideas that need to be rethought and reimagined in the 21st century.
Yeah, agreed. Andrea just commented that she's having this same conversation right now because candidates of color are heads of household and can't afford to live on the local average of a nonprofit salary for the role we're hiring for. So, and I think, Andrea, I don't know if you're a executive in your nonprofit, but this kind of leads into the next question, Minal. Where do leaders begin to make their organizations more equitable work environments? And if you could also talk about having to talk up to board leadership and execute, because I think that's it also stems in the boardroom is this belief that nonprofits need to really have such small operating budgets, which is where salaries sit, and where diversity is even more lacking than in the nonprofit itself. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, Dan Pallotta did a lot of good work on like debunking that myth of low overheads is a virtue.
Mhm.
And I think he should be looked at for that. But fundamentally, if leaders want to create a more equitable organization, and particularly in the workplace, it has to start with leadership, right? Which means that it may have to start with your board and educating them, because they're the ones who have the most power in the organization. Like understanding how to do this work requires, like I said, equity comes down to power, money, and time. So it requires an understanding of power and how it moves and shifts in an organization. And power is different in an organization than it is in democracies. I know that there are a lot of nonprofits who engage in grassroots organizing, which is really important and really powerful and effective when we're talking about our society and our democracy. However, in an organization, you can't really vote out your CEO, or the people who do are the board,
Mhm.
right? So we need to start with the people in power, whether that's the CEO or the board, and help to shift their mindset and help to get them to understand what this is really about. Then we can start to talk to them about how do we apply this to the organization, meaning what are the observable behaviors you want to see, right? You need to understand how DEI relates to the work that you do, not just in theory. No one should be writing vision statements saying that they're going to end systemic racism. No one should even be writing vision statements that say that they're going to create a more inclusive like state that they're in, right? Because it is, with a few exceptions, there probably are some organizing bodies that might be working at that level, but with most of you don't have that level of power in the area in which you work. So where do you have power? And then how do you use that power to leverage differences for change, right? So it needs to start with leadership, but then we have to translate, after mindsets have been shifted amongst leadership, in order to scale it, we have to start getting down to the concrete observable behaviors you want to see in the organization.
This is a wonderful lead-in, because we're going to actually be talking about setting realistic expectations as a leader next month. So I'm glad you're bringing this up so we can weave in some of these expectations that are much more realistic and measurable, and will have a huge impact as well. So thank you for bringing that up. And it's really important too. So what are some let's get into some of these underlying beliefs and assumptions that leaders should be questioning, that even maybe staff should be questioning as we're talking about equity in how we design organizations.
Yeah, so I talk about how in the book how like bias has really been baked into the system, and we assume certain things are true, which may not be true. And this can get uncomfortable when we start talking about this, if you're not already, because I sort of make the analogy that it's a little bit like you're discovering as an adult that Santa Claus isn't real.
Right.
Like it's things that you just totally believed were true. And now I'm going to tell you that maybe they're not. So, hold on to your seat and breathe through this. One of the assumptions that we have is about infinite growth and scale. That scale is a virtue, that we have to scale all of our programs for impact, and that infinite growth is possible. That quarter after quarter, and year after year, we can get more revenues, we can get more fundraising dollars, we can become bigger and bigger and bigger, and bigger is a virtue, right? Infinite growth is not a reality, right? Because clearly we have run out of planet. And there is actually an article in the Harvard Business Review this month on how organizations should shift from operations to project management, because operations were really important when we were talking about the days of the assembly line. But we have fundamentally got to a point with computers and with technology that we have maximized human productivity. And there is no more gains to be gotten on productivity. The place where we have not maximized is human creativity, right? And human innovation, and the way to change things for the better. And that requires collaboration. And that is not an efficient process, right? It requires time. And so in order to do that, we need to question this assumption both of scale and of infinite growth, because we could actually have a deeper, more sustainable impact by going smaller. And so instead of infinite growth, we should be looking at sustainability. How long will this impact last? How long will this organization last doing what it's doing? Right? How long can we have a positive benefit on society? And that's a very different question to ask than what most nonprofits ask themselves. Some of the other assumptions that we should be asking ourselves are really about like what I talked about before about salaries. And that gets into this idea of like money as a necessary evil, which is what's heard in the nonprofit sector, right? There's like always this little bit of a disdain for fundraising folks, and fundraising folks has it for like the programmatic folks, that they're too idealistic. Neither of those positions is collaborative, nor is it particularly true. And this is what I loved about Edgar Villanueva's book. Like, instead of seeing money as a necessary evil, which actually leads a lot of leaders to not want to talk about it, which is also really damaging. We need to see money as medicine or as nutrition for your organization, right? How do you use this, this fuel or this food in order to be a healthy organization, right? So like we need to really question that. And that means being able to talk about money and how much money it takes to live, and how are the ethical ways to gain money. You know, I worked for a reproductive justice rights organization, and they used to have people, and they were working globally, they used to have people who would donate out of like a eugenics philosophy of keeping the population in Africa down. Like, that money should be returned. I don't care how much it is. Like, that is not an ethical way to make money to benefit the people that you serve, right? So we need to be able to like talk about how is the ethical way to make money to generate revenue or fundraising dollars, and then what is an ethical way of spending money that benefits not only our beneficiaries but also the people doing this work who are committed to it, right? It's a both and also to what proportion, right? Like, I often say that if you're in fundraising and you are running stories of beneficiaries for your fundraising campaigns, you need to pay those people for their story the way you would pay a Deloitte consultant. Exactly. You are not a journalist, so there's no reason why you can't pay your source. And that is their intellectual property that you are making money off of. And you are making significantly more money than they will ever see in their life. And so you need to pay them really, really well, because that is using money that allows them to leverage their own lived experience in a way that actually brings money into their community. Right? And then we also want to question the assumption that puts white people or anybody else of a dominant identity in the center. That's a long-standing practice in the nonprofit space because of what I spoke about earlier about the history of philanthropy. But it's so pervasive we don't see it. I don't even think people are doing it intentionally, but we are so socialized to centering whiteness, we don't see it. One of the things I saw recently about this sort of anti-CRT movement in schools was a young Black man who tweeted, "I have never seen the media interview a Black parent about how race is being taught to their kids in school," which I also have never seen, right? Even in the arguments around education, we are centering white parents and white families in a conversation about race, right? So we need to be able to like question the assumption that white is the default, or that, and there's a lovely talk by Anne Hathaway at one of the human rights campaigns that says that there is this myth that gayness orbits around straightness, that transgender orbits around cisgender, and that all other races orbit around whiteness. That is a myth that is not true. And so we need to decenter those identities. And occasionally, at times when it's appropriate, we need to be able to center other identities. But at other times, we need to just make enough space that the center is open and spacious, right? And see what happens when we're able to create that breathing room where it's not just all about this one identity.
it's a very uncomfortable but important conversation to be having. And it's so true that and we're not going to get into the CRT debate here, but it is very interesting how the topic has shifted from the systems that create a world where racial prejudice and discrimination and oppression exists, to how victimized white people feel about how it's making them feel, that or how their kids are feeling about it. And that's not the point.
And well,
so it is.
To be fair, let me be fair about this and say that this happens in all systems of oppression. Because I'm Indian, and even though I was born and raised in this country, so I'm Indian American, India, before the British showed up, had a caste system that was a complex system of oppression. And I just saw like something else where somebody, like, there is this rising sense of like Hindu phobia that Hindu extremists and fundamentalists are using to justify the oppression of other minorities in the country, right? So that is a tried and true tactic of people with power, to claim that the world is against them in order to justify that. And that, like, I understand why it can be upsetting for white people, but I also am like, listen, as an Indian, I'm able to own that and say that, like, that is happening in my community, and call that out and take the heat for it. And I don't expect anybody from any other community to go and correct Hindus who are doing that, right? So I say this as somebody who's been on both sides of the equations. Like, yes, India has experienced supreme white supremacy through colonialism. And we have also perpetuated our own systems of oppression through the caste system, right? The same could be said of other communities that have been marginalized, such as Jews, such as LGBT, where there is a thread of anti-trans within the LGBT community, right? These things happen in a lot of spaces. And so what white people should know is that they are not alone in having to face their privilege.
Right. I think that's incredibly important. And you're making an excellent point that, oppression and power struggles and the way that we create equity in this world is it commonly feels like it's in shift. And but at the same time, as an optimistic person that I am, I also see these moments in time where we have identified these issues and have at least made strides, or those that have been in places of power have had, what you said, moral courage to use power in a way that does create that space that you're referring to. And I think if we have more servant leaders that are doing that too, that we're going to be in a much better location, a much better place, right? And also back to, and this is incredibly important for nonprofit leaders to hear, reachable, attainable, and not scalable, but sustainable goals and expectations and vision, right? Minal, this is so wonderful. I mean, this is selfish of me, okay? Because I just really enjoy hearing from you. I learned something new, and also feel like there's action to be taken and things that I can do to improve. And I hope other people that are listening in as well. If you do have a last minute question, please do put it in the chat. And I believe we might have Karen, thank you for your comment. I didn't even see these, I'm sorry. But she says, I'm white too, and I don't understand why white people won't accept responsibility. I know. So I hear that. So thank you everyone for your comments and your questions today. I believe we've given away some books. I'm not seeing them in the chat, but hopefully we have gone ahead and started to raffle those off. Make sure that you're getting your, if you did win one of Minal's books today, make sure that you're getting the contact information to the folks that are messaging you in our chat box as well. And Minal, while we are waiting for any questions to come in, can you just tell folks how it would be best for them to connect with you and anything else that they should know about your work before we wrap up?
Sure. So the book has a website, theequitybook.com, where you can order the book and subscribe to our newsletter and contact me. I am also available through my company's website, which is brevityandwit.com, all spelled out. And you can just send me an email. And actually, I'll even put my email in the chat if anybody wants to connect with me directly. I am also very active on LinkedIn. That's probably like the most prolific social media platform for me. So you can connect with me there and be kept abreast of everything that we're doing over at Brevity and Wit.
Minal and Brevity and Wit put out a wonderful newsletter as well. It's just full of really, really fabulous information. So if you are interested in keeping up on this topic and just really smart communication in general, it's the really good newsletters. So it was, and hopefully I say this name right, because it could go either way. I'm going to say Faye, but it's spelled F-A-I, Nanette and Edward. So congratulations to you all that won the book today. We really appreciate it. Nanette said, I would really love to hear how we make the changes towards equitable pay model, given that, given the current pay system. Is it something we work towards over time, or do we rip the bandage off? Minal, do you have time to answer that?
Yeah, so it's going to have to be a two-prong approach. There are things that you can do now, such as pay gap studies that show, like, are people getting paid similarly according to identity, right? Women and men, people of color versus white people, right? Like, just looking at that. And you should be able to resolve that now. But there's also a long-term strategy in terms of getting foundations and donors to understand that they should not be emphasizing low overheads as a sign of effectiveness, right? So there is a sort of an advocacy effort that needs to be done to rethink all of this.
And I don't know how you feel about this, Minal, but the other thing that I've noticed, and then I know is happening in many of progressive circles, is also sharing salary more transparently in job descriptions, which it kind of creates this peer pressure and also normalizes where salaries probably should be more, or where they are. And you can also kind of see really how are other nonprofits paying in other locations. And I think it might help, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, and more importantly, from an organizational standpoint, every job description should have a salary listed that is non-negotiable. Because the evidence has proven not only do men negotiate more than women, but more detrimentally, when women negotiate, they are seen as less desirable to work with. So the problem is not that women don't have confidence. The problem is that they are very astutely picking up on the social cost of negotiating. The only way to remedy that is to say that this is the salary for this job and it is non-negotiable, no matter who gets the job. Right? So every job description should be posting its salary, and it should not be negotiated once the job is accepted. And also that saves everybody time. They don't have to apply for jobs that can't pay them, right? It's just like, it's going to actually be more efficient. That's like one of the few things that actually creates more efficiency in the DEI space if everyone would just adopt it.
I love it. I love it. And what a mind-blowing concept, but it's so true. Like, why are we continuing to do this when we all know where we're going to end up, or at least on the employer side, we know where we're going to end up, and yet we go through the song and dance every time, right? And we put everyone else through it that can't afford that time and energy, right? So it's really important. Minal, thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful. Thank you to our audience for participating, all your questions. This was fabulous, as I fully expected. You'll be able to get the recording on YouTube. We will have new live streams starting in the first Friday of December with Develop Well. So please feel free to jump on at 1 p.m. on the first 2 Fridays in December as well. And again, if you missed part 1 and 2, I highly recommend that you go back and listen to those videos. They are on our YouTube channel. Minal, thank you so much for your time, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Jamie.